We're going to get started. This is the meeting of the Operations Planning Committee for June 27th. Thank you everybody for joining. Joanne, thanks for being here, and Frank, thank you for being here for Board of Finance. Got a late email from Tara last night that neither she nor Duke is available to be here today. Okay, John, we'll start with you.
Really quickly, we issued the mandatory referral for Oxford School, which I think went to you and Tara and the building committee, so that first step is taken. I haven't been following the Pear Tree Point Building Committee, but I don't know where they are in their kind of process, but maybe you want to ask Jeremy for a mandatory referral on that.
Sure. I'm not sure if it's too soon, but,
okay.
but we'll discuss it. Yeah.
Just so we're kind of ahead of the game and start that process. Tuesday evening, we discussed 77 Leroy, otherwise known as Leroy West or Pemberton 16. That hearing's still open, but for those that aren't caught up, I guess the current owners, if you will, are asking for a shift in the age restriction down to 55 and over. And as they presented it, it is due to economic hardship. So without getting into some of the details, the commission had a lot of questions about that particular site and parking and the constraints, and there's a bit of testimony. So we plan to close the hearing on Monday. We're having a special meeting, and not only on that, but on a number of issues. And the point I want to make out of that is I think 55 and older housing is something that the town really needs to look into. With Mrs. Glassmeyer's development up in Noble Hill, the old Noble Brothers property, we did 62 and older, and that was kind of a groundbreaking effort on the town's part to start restricting age, market rate, age restricted housing. I know we've had, Old Town Hall homes, and we have explored it in other fashions, but I think it's a really interesting concept. It's kind of that next step from just straight old market rate, non-restricted housing to empty nester housing, if you will, and then the next level is 62 and over. The reason I bring this up is even if it does not, the commission does not find it applicable to this property, I think it's something that, the commission and the town should look into, because you look throughout the state and throughout the states, and I travel throughout the states, and many of my clients live in these communities, and they're really neat. And there's, in that, you only need one individual to be 55 and older in the household. So you will find younger families and some with children, which is, it's a more diverse community, if you will. And there's certain federal standards that you have to meet to restrict it to 55 and older, quote unquote. So I just raise that because, again, I don't want the commission's decision on this particular property, which again, remember, was never approved by the commission, Pemberton 16, to set a policy standard townwide. If I was sticking around longer, that would be kind of the next thing, and I'll pass that along to my commission. But from a leadership standpoint, I think it's an interesting concept. I think those are kind of the highlights. Just on a personal note, I announced I'd like to resign from the commission and as chairperson. Earlier chairperson in the commission. I was asked by my fellow commissioners to stay on as chair until I resigned from the commission. I plan to do that at the end of July. I think we'll have our deck literally cleared. I know there's a few individuals interested in serving, so I think we're going to be well suited. That gives the commission a month to basically make the transition and the appointment of the replacement candidate. So that's basically it. So I guess July will be my last OPC meeting, or if we have one.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll endeavor to have one. No August. For us.
No August,
for
yeah.
us, summer's a super busy time, so it's kind of business as usual.
Yeah, we usually take August off as well.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
First, thank you for being all you've done with the commission.
Thanks.
It's been great.
Appreciate that.
Is economic hardship a valid reason? I mean, is that something the commission is obligated to take into account?
Typically not. Planning and Zoning Commission is not. There's certain aspects of viability that we do look at in E30G applications. But, again, without getting into the details of this application, it's typically something we do not look at. And I think through the testimony and the back and forth, you might have heard in Pemberton 16 that was a question that was raised. I did forget, at this meeting on Monday, we're going through a lot of the zoning regs that we've been discussing for months and months and months. So we hope to have a resolution on the MU zone and a lot of the zone changes. So that was one of the things I wanted to tick off before I departed. So that's going to be an important meeting it's basically a general meeting other than this one item that we continued. So it should be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But we're really looking forward to getting that behind us as well. And that all stemmed from the town plan, as a lot of you know. So.
Okay, and in the event we don't have a July meeting, can you just give us a very brief, where are we on the 3 big developments?
Okay, so David Genovese is coming back on, I believe, July 16th we have a meeting. That's what do they call it now? Baywaters Corbin District.
Yes.
Corbin
project.
Yeah, so he had a long and arduous task related to getting state approvals because he's on a state road, and also about a drainage ditch or water course, depending on how you view it. So I think he'll have all his I's dotted and T's crossed. And from what I understand, there's going to be a slight reduction in the footprint based on what the state came back on Post Road. I'm not sure where the EPC Commission laid out, but it sounds like we will see that. There are minor changes to the site plan. Well, we might even be able to handle that in one evening. Federal, last I talked to Jeremy Ginsberg was going through and kind of working with the ARB and getting some of the sign regulations in place. And so I have not gotten an update other than that groundbreaking should occur by the end of the year on federal. I also was told the other evening that Palmer's is using the same construction company, or is planning to use the same construction company. I have not confirmed that, but that's from Jeremy, a pretty good source. So there might even be some synergies between those two projects, from their standpoint. But I think it's a brilliant idea to have the same contractor, because there are some aspects around the drainage that are I guess cohesive. So I don't know the timing of that, but it seems like if you're the developer was moving forward with a contractor, that they are moving forward. I believe they all will have to come back to the commission at some point on the northern side with minor site plan changes, and this is normal course of action as they fine-tune plans. I think one of them might have even changed architects. So, but all moving forward, and groundbreaking of 2 of 3, I've been told, should occur by the end of this year. So it's going to be a mess for a couple of years, by the way. but the end product is going to be pretty awesome. And go ahead.
Will Palmer's keep the supermarket open during this?
Palmer's, just so everybody remembers, Palmer's supermarket building will not be touched throughout the redevelopment.
Okay, thank
the
you.
post office actually will be moving, if it hasn't already, to the lower level of Palmer's Market. That was the last I heard.
Good.
Yeah, Palmer's doesn't own the land the market's on. It's her place.
And just because I had to leave the last meeting, I just want to make something abundantly clear around board communication, because I know this has still been an ongoing topic among the Board of Education and other boards. This town's, it's integral that we work together. I joined a planning and zoning board that I felt didn't work well together at the time with the other boards and commissions of town. And it is very important to me, both personally and as a leader, that we don't add a level of bureaucracy. I gave an example which didn't get quoted in the paper. Imagine I had to FOIA every request coming into this planning and zoning department. The success of this town is that each and every board works together and relies upon each other. So I will fight for that within this board and then in my next life, perhaps. So I just want to make that clear.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I didn't get to participate in that part of the discussion. So not to belabor that point. So That's it. Sorry.
That's great.
Longer than I thought.
And we do want to thank you, John. There's so much that's been accomplished under your watch. So the town is very grateful to you.
I had a great
I know
team
some
too,
of
by
it
the
is
way.
controversial, so
Yeah.
probably not everybody's thrilled with the direction that the town is going in. But I think you and your commissioners have done an excellent job of sort of threading that needle on allowing the town to move forward, but in a thoughtful way, so that we're not overburdened and we still remain the community that people want to move here. They want to be here for the amenities that we have and for our great school system. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
The balance and thoughtfulness and due diligence is
Yeah, and again, it's-
well respected by
And
many.
you get paid the big bucks.
Yeah,
for
it's,
it.
as I always remind you. No, but it truly is. It was a culture change, I think, over the years. That, and it started with under Susan Cameron's watch, and, you know, she passed it along. So, you know, it's the people I work with. I mean, that's the key.
The
finding
team, absolutely.
the right teammates. And I think, you know, we didn't always agree, and we all here clearly don't agree, but I think we work well together. So I don't want to see that continue.
That process was fair.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
So I'm going to hop in here because I have a couple of things I want to be sure to get to. First, I want to acknowledge that we had a series of police promotions last night. The first of a couple rounds of hirings and promotions. Jeremiah Marin was promoted to the rank of captain. Nick Aranzulo was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and Derek Mulcahy and Daniel Scombros were both promoted to the rank of sergeant. So very exciting. We have, I like to say, we have a really deep bench at the Darien Police Department. So, but because we're small and, you know, the leadership structure at the PD is pretty narrow, there doesn't often come times for these kinds of promotions, so it's very, very exciting, and there was a wonderful ceremony last night at the DCA. We had 2 former chiefs in the audience, which was terrific, and lots of retired Darien police officers. I believe that interviews, for those of you that don't know, Chief Ray Osborne is retiring as of September 1st. I think interviews are happening today and maybe tomorrow for the new chief in Darien. They are not looking outside the organization, so they're all internal interviews that they're having. So hopefully, I think the intention is that they'd like to identify the new chief who can work hand in hand with Ray for a month before he departs in September, because we're having such a, you know, a transition in the leadership team in general. So very, very exciting, and we look forward to hearing who our new chief will be.
And that's the police commission's role.
That's the police commission's role, yes. I always need to apologize for the state of our roadways. Again, it's the price of progress. I think our natural gas expansion, the main part of our natural gas expansion project is complete. Now is the time when folks who live along those routes can connect to the gas system. So the roads will remain patched for between a year and 18 months so that you don't have to continually cut into new asphalt. And then the town will come back and repave all the roadways that have been dug up. There's also been a bit of Aquarian water main work that's gone on throughout town. Same situation, we let it settle for a little while and then we come back and repave. We will be doing our normal repaving program this summer, just under 4 miles, and then next year we're going to pave about 5.5 miles. So thank you for bearing with us on that.
So all the roads that have been dug up for the
Yes.
gas will all be repaved this summer?
No, not
Next
this summer.
summer.
The gas
Next.
project just went in, so we
Got
have
it.
to let people connect over the next year.
Okay,
let
thank
the-
you.
Let the trenches settle,
Mhm.
and then come back and repave.
So people have just a window of a year to connect, or?
18 months from the time the main goes in front of their house. And there should be a lot of Eversource outreach happening along those routes. But if you know someone that is along the gas main, they should be proactive and call Eversource. We've given them ideas of ancillary roadways that they should be targeting for connections.
What roadway is the gas main going down? Is that?
Oh,
on
it's
Lee West?
it's on West Avenue from Stamford to the Post Road. It's up Leroy Avenue all the way to Darien High School. It's now up McLaren Road, poised to connect to Royal School when Royal School is ready. It came up Middlesex to came up Hilton to connect to Middlesex Middle School, and up Norotan Avenue to connect the Norotan Fire Department. So all of those roadways, there's lots of little.
So if we know anyone, we should say.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
They can call Eversource.
Almost some of the streets along the side?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry that Tara isn't here this morning, but I want to make a public thank you to Dr. Elliot Landon for his service over the past year to the town, and we're very much looking forward to Dr. Alan Adley joining the town as our new superintendent, coming from Granby. We heard that at our last meeting. Had the privilege of meeting him very briefly, very well accomplished. Seems like he's going to be a great fit for the town of Darien. Very excited about that. And we've had some notable teacher retirements. I don't have a full list, but I know Linda Sorensen and Joe Squio have retired at the end of this school year. I think Joe was here for 45 years, which is remarkable. I think many of our kids had Joe Squio. So want to thank them publicly for their longtime service to the town of Darien. As you could see when you came in, the sedimentation basin dredging project in front of Town Hall is underway. That will finish in September. Highland Farm, Joanne, thank you for your note on that. We have some things to discuss with the Ox Ridge Hunt Club about, doing after action, I think is important, and then to talk about what we perceive as challenges for next year when we have the parking lots and the walking trail. So we're in the process of developing a bid package for all of that work that will happen up at Highland Farms, and we hope that will hopefully take place before the end of the year. We need asphalt. The asphalt plants close at early December, so we're moving on that time schedule. The Ox Ridge Elementary School Committee is meeting this morning. They're moving along very well. They've had great meetings up at the state regarding the school construction grant. We're hopeful that we'll get at least a little bit of money back on that. The appropriation has been approved by the RTM, which is great. Pear Tree is moving along, has some of the same challenges that Highland Farm did with concerns on the part of the neighbors. So the chairman of that committee is going to be bringing some things back to the Parks and Rec Commission in their July meeting for some discussion, but generally that project is moving along. There'll be a special session. I don't know when. I don't know, Frank, if you might have a better idea. There's going to be a special session up in Hartford to address the issue of tolls. It's a high priority for the governor, so I anticipate and Terry will share some information about that. So we'll hear more on that. It will be a very important conversation for this town, and we talk about it all the time around the COG table. And last but not least, the Board of Selectmen is going to undertake a project to develop a community value statement. And from that will flow our updated goals and objectives. And I'd like to ask for all of you to outreach to your boards or commissions, because we'd like your input in terms of, we're just talking about a short 1 or 2 sentence value statement that really, when somebody is researching the town of Darien, or we're all doing our work, what is our core, what's our core value here in Darien, to give people a sense for who we are, or who we want to be. So I really would very much like your input on that.
Excellent idea. And it could be right on the front page of the website.
Yeah.
The 2 lines.
Yep.
There's, I think there's a lot of as you and I have spoken, there's a misunderstanding or a misrepresentation more than anything sometimes of who we are.
Right, and we live in a new time where the town of Darien has never really had to market itself before, but we find ourselves wanting to market ourselves so that we can remind people that we're to come here with your business, or bring your family here. So I think that will just be a small piece. It'll be helpful to the Chamber of Commerce, to the Board of Realtors. Right. So would love your input on that.
Yeah, especially with the changing of the facade with these 3 major developments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is the time frame for your
We're just about to begin our discussion on that. There's no real time frame. I'm hoping that we can wrap it up before the November elections. Okay. I want, really the opportunity for this current Board of Selectmen to be the driver of this project. And that's it for me. So why don't we go to Joanne?
The RTM had a good meeting, got a lot done. The contentious issue was the smallest number issue, which was the Highland Farms. I think the RTM came to the right conclusion. The taxpayers will be able to enjoy this field now going forward. And we have talked, I think, we need to do more market rate rental of it if we are going to rent it, because the taxpayers paid $6.2 million. So if we are going to let a private group use it, they need to pay what it cost a private group to rent that place, and maybe what they used to rent it out to other groups. We also have to look at how long it's out of service for the town.
Yep.
When we do rent it, because it seemed unusually long this year, and maybe just because we're paying more attention to it than we have in the past. But this was our first year of really seeing, okay, we rent it out for a week, and it's really out of commission for at least a month. So we have to look at that going forward and see what is the best use of that field from the taxpayer perspective.
Correct.
We have no contractual obligation to let anyone use it.
Well, we do have an obligation under the special permit to allow the Hunt Club to use it for 1 week for their June horse show. That's the extent of it.
Yeah, but, okay, we can talk about that later of how it's written. But anyway, the point is, whatever we do, we have to always have in mind the best interests of the taxpayer of Darien.
Agreed.
And so I think that'll happen. I think they did a good job presenting on the Oxford School, because many of us did not want to just vote a blank ticket for $60 million. And as Kip and his colleagues explained, the state makes you do it backwards. And that's a real problem. And I don't know if, Terry, going forward, we didn't want to vote no on it, because if we voted no, then you couldn't go for the state grants. But you're voting on something without really knowing what you're voting on. So it was backwards. And he explained that very well, and I think that's why it passed.
And Terry, we can walk you through how the state requires you to put a project to the school construction committee versus the new process that the town of Darien undertakes, which the Pear Tree project will follow the town's process. They're dramatically different, and they come out with a much better financial result. So I'd like to share that with you to the extent you have some influence.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, you want to build a school, well, here's a number, but we haven't put it out to bid. We don't know exactly what we're doing.
Right.
The number could be higher, it could be lower, so you want to make it high so that you don't come.
So it's not at 100% accuracy.
It's
Right.
not even close.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was a problem I heard a lot of people in the RTM talking about it, but we felt we were between a rock and a hard place on that.
Well, for your perspective, Terry, should a project come in under budget, you've likely sequestered bonding capacity. You've over-sequestered bonding capacity at the state level, which you wouldn't necessarily have to do under a different model.
Okay. Happy to work on that.
Great.
And the other thing was accepting the Highland Farm, the Darien Athletic Foundation grant, which was very generous of them, and
For the running path.
for the running path, the 2 projects through the school and through the Diller property. So that'll be a nice new amenity for the town.
That's great. And that reminds me, thank you, I'm just going to jump back for a second. We had a presentation at the Board of Selectmen. Another very generous gift to the town is in the offing. The Darien Athletic Foundation, the Darien Foundation, and Parks and Recreation are going to partner to complete a walking trail around Weed Beach, which includes a boardwalk. And it really is a pretty magnificent plan. They unrolled it to the Board of Selectmen at one of our last meetings. And it's a very unique partnership. So each party, including the town, will take a third of the cost of that project. So Parks and Rec is busy detailing. There was the beginning of that plan already, but this will allow us to activate the short lane property and to use part of Weed Beach that isn't otherwise been used. So between Highland Farm, the Diller gift, and the gift at Weed Beach, we will now have 3 wonderful walking trails in town.
That's
At
fabulous.
least the one for Highland Farm will be ADA compliant. So I think that's a tremendous new amenity for the town.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much so.
That's fantastic, because I've also been asked, and this came in context of the Short Lane, of the Highland Farms, well, we never did anything with Short Lane. So I'm glad we're finally doing something with that property.
You know, it's neat to see the town actually, I know we call them public-private partnerships, but the partnership has been the money from the private organizations.
Correct.
Right.
And town use of property.
Yeah.
This is really neat in that you're now combining financial power amongst
Absolutely.
public and private too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the next step, I think, or a good step forward.
Completely agree.
You reminded me one thing that I think is of interest to everybody. The Oxford Racket and Riding Club came back to the commission for an amendment to their special permit, which would allow a different class of members for paddle. One of the things that were in early discussions were related maybe, the Token E Club was left without a home, and they had early exploration that might have even entailed a public property, which didn't seem to work. So that kind of solves now that issue as well, which I think was a good amendment. And it doesn't intensify use because of the seasonal aspects of paddle versus the use of equestrian activities.
Did you guys approve that?
Yep.
That's
It was,
great.
I believe, a couple meetings ago. so.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I've been talking to people who wanted to join there and paddle, and I'm on a paddle board, and they were calling me, can we get a team in the league? And we've been working with them to help them grow that program,
So-
because it's a good idea.
Yeah, and the key is it really doesn't intensify the use because Token E Club has been using those courts. I've been told also there's going to be an upgrade of lighting, so it's actually going to be an enhancement to what
Yeah.
exists now in terms of impact on the neighbors with no more intense use, so.
Yeah, and it'll be a much nicer facility, because if you ever played paddle over there, it's really
Yeah,
difficult.
terrible.
It's
And
terrible.
again, paddle members won't get the same amenities as the Riding and Racket Club, but
Right.
Right, but it'll help the Riding and Racket Club be financially viable, and
Yeah.
they need the members.
yeah, so, and then, sorry, I forgot one other. I did tour the Riding and Racket Club facility, and it's just, that's my first time I've really stepped foot on that property,
beautiful.
as it's been developed, and it is simply stunning. The biggest thing that I came out of that meeting with is that there is a concerted effort to get the Darien High School varsity team to use that facility on
For the squash.
some level, okay? And didn't get much traction with the administration, but I think people within the student squash community have reached out to the club to figure out some way to use that facility. So hopefully there's some good news to come down this fall.
We've been working on that for a long time, and actually those discussions about the Darien High School squash team using that facility were part of our discussions on the acquisition of Highland Farms.
No, it's part of the special permit process. So that's why my first, we won't get into it,
Yep.
but moving forward, it does seem like there might be some work behind the scenes, if you will, to try to facilitate some use of that facility. And it is, I don't play squash and I don't ride horses, but it was just awesome. So
It's beautiful, and public service announcement, I think this Saturday at 5 PM, there's a squash demo
Oh.
at the Oxridge Riding and Racket Club. So, you can go check out the squash and see the club too. It's quite magnificent. This Saturday at 5, yeah.
Can I say one thing, Joanne? I want to really compliment the RTM, because in the May meeting, there was a lot of miscommunication, let's put it that way. But I felt that in the June meeting, many of the RTM members truly did a lot of homework, a lot of research. They certainly listened, you guys that did these reports, F&B and you and a few other committees that really drove all the discussion, did a great job, and I think the RTM members themselves embraced a lot of this in a much more thoughtful and thorough way than had happened in May. So kudos to all the members. It was a huge difference.
And I'll dovetail on that. There was just communication.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was
Well-
at a couple committee meetings, and we were able to communicate
Yeah.
and put all the information out there.
Absolutely.
It's amazing what a little communication will do to an issue.
Well, and that was the whole
Yes.
point of May, and I had called a lot of RTM members before the vote, and some of them that weren't educated as much certainly said that they would take the time to learn more, and certainly attended some of those meetings, so
The
absolutely.
process worked.
It does
It
work.
just took a
and
little longer than some people expected.
People were a little
but-
critical, some people in the, that were watching our meeting were a little critical of the May meeting, but we had to have that discussion. We had to have it out in the open. You can't have discussions behind the scenes if you're trying to communicate. So by having that discussion in this room, I think people realize that it's to the town's benefit the more we can work together. We don't always agree on everything, but that's okay. We're at least hearing each other, respecting each other's opinions. So that's how I think it was a positive overall. So I thank all the members of the RTM for embracing this meeting 100%.
Yeah, they were.
Great, thank you. Frank?
Yeah, I'll just say, the Board of Finance, after the RTM approved the Uxbridge School bonding authorization, and, what occurred to me in this process was how valuable the building committee structure was. Not, obviously, it was put in place to reduce misjudgments and just construction mistakes in a sense, but it turned out in this process, because of what you talked about and people putting on the table this very large number, proved very politically valuable, because there's a lot of confidence in the building committee that, so that was a good move.
Building committee's
It's a
a good
terrific
idea.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I can imagine that the Board of Finance this summer will approve a resolution. The community value statement includes something about financial prudence. Just kidding.
No, I might imagine. That's important.
Why not?
Don't,
I
that's
mean,
not kidding.
But that is
Yeah.
what we're known for.
That's important.
Right.
Anyway.
We're doing all these good things,
Yes.
but always with the overlay of financial discipline, which I think is,
Very important.
And common good, where's the balance
Yeah.
of that? Yeah, we do it
You
that very well.
you guys have an awesome document, which it should, if it hasn't gone out wider, but I think Mr. Palin made it. It's the debt schedule.
Yeah, oh,
yes,
yes.
yes.
And it is just stunning
Yeah.
how that kind of plays out. And I can't speak to it in detail, but I've seen it, and it just shows what financial planning and prudence does and allows these projects to move
Yes.
forward with limited impacts. And we've tremendously lucked out on interest rates on this next
Yeah.
round, too. I mean, it's, as a financial guy, I can't believe we're talking about a 2% 10-year, but anyway, we are. And so, as leaders,
Yeah.
we should, again, prudently take advantage of this environment.
It's
So-
good for our retirement accounts, but it's certainly good
Yeah.
for our infrastructure projects.
Those of us senior citizens, it's.
Exactly. Anything else, Frank? Okay, great, thank you. Terry?
State budget, we were done June 5th, and the budget was on time this year, which was, certainly had a benefit because we know municipalities know what they have to spend. Couple of good things about the budget is, one, it was on time, and two, budget reserve of $2 billion, which is very good in case we hit another financial bump. There were no regionalization efforts at all in the budget. No school regionalization, no statewide property tax. The budget does increase spending 2.4% for fiscal '20 and 2.5% for fiscal '21, which is not so great. There was no cutting of expenses, and I think that was the frustration for many of us. Talk about fiscal prudence. I mean, there are things we can be cutting in the state budget, and we're just not.
There is a $450 million concession, that assumed concession,
Very
It's
good
assumed.
point. Yes, it's assumed, which
not agreed.
Dan Malloy did in the 2011 budget of, I think he asked $1 billion of concessions from the state unions. Never got them. So yes, this budget has $450 million of concessions to be decided upon by the union members. But by state constitution, we have to pass a balanced budget. So in fact, the budget is not balanced unless we do something before the end of the year. It's on the assumed savings, which we can be
It's an interesting
optimistic.
concept in general. I've always
Right.
thought that. Are those things called lapses?
No.
No.
A lapse is an agency that it hasn't spent certain
see.
funds,
Okay.
certain line items. But good question.
To bake in an unidentified savings into a budget, I'm
It's a
not
fudge
sure
factor.
that our Board of Finance would support a budget like that.
Well, it's not a fudge factor. No, it's not a fudge factor. What it is they are looking for concessions from the unions.
Yeah. Mhm.
Perhaps.
A dream factor.
A dream factor, that would be more accurately said. So,
Put
they
some pressure
continue.
on the unions.
But they're in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
No, I understand, but still,
Sure.
The state unions are driving public policy in our state. Every day I see it. So, right or wrong, that's the reality. We did pass some very good gun safety legislation this year, passed 3 bills, one on a couple. I've got an opinion piece coming out, today, so it'll be in the Darien Times, you can read it. The bag ban, after many, many years of effort,
I forgot
passed
that one, yes.
concurrently with the bag ban here. The state bag ban was enclosed in the budget, as part of the budget. So it wasn't standalone. And what it does is, starting July 1st, plastic bags statewide, there'll be a 10-cent fee. No, I'm just trying to remember it all between the Darien version and all the versions we've seen over the years. And I did co-sponsor, introduce this legislation. A number of us did this year, and was very happy to support this. It's time. I mean, when we started the Darien Environmental Group almost 30 years ago, one of the first projects we did was reusable canvas bags, and many of us are still using them. It's not that hard.
No.
So it charges a 10-cent fee on plastic, and is it a
For 2
two-year
years.
window, and then they're...
For 2 years, and then they're banned
they're banned.
entirely. So Darien
And do you know, I mean,
entires
getting into the
them.
minutia here, but
Yeah.
do you know the thickness of the bag? that we're
Yes,
talking about? Is
it's-
it the 4 mil? Is it-
It's that, yeah,
it's-
sure.
It's the really thin one?
It's the really thin one.
All right.
It's not the ones that can be reused.
Okay.
And that's where it's, when you have, as
Ugh.
you've long said, let's just pass one piece of legislation so that the towns aren't competing with each other, and you shop in Stamford and it's different from Darien, different from Greenwich. But the statewide ban in 2 years will take care of that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, there will be a differentiation between the towns.
Yeah, so it still works with the town ordinance that was passed, because
Yes.
the town ordinance charges a fee for brown paper bags,
Yes.
and that fee is kept by the retailer. The state's 10-cent fee on plastic is remitted to the state.
General fund.
Yeah. So they kind of work
Right.
hand in hand with the overall objective of not getting rid of them in the long run.
Right. So it's time. Couple of things also that passed that many of us had reservations about was paid family leave, which is a payroll deduction for everybody who works in the state except single. Self-employed may opt into the program. It will be a state-run program administered by the Department of Labor, which many of us had, while across the board, there was broad support for paid family leave. The way the mechanics of how this will be delivered causes many of us a lot of concern.
And there's the other group
The
that's not,
sustainability.
that's not affected by
The
this.
state
Yeah.
union members do
How can
not
they do that?
participate. They
Well,
run the place.
It's until they bargain for the benefit.
Right.
I think
Right.
that's
And
how
they
it works.
may, I mean, there's the thought that they, even when they bargain for the benefit, they may not have to pay into it. Somebody else might pay into it for, it's simply not equitable that this is allowed to happen, but it does. So we just have to continue to work to educate people and try and move the needle and get it changed. But it is the broadest paid family leave. There are 6 states that offer paid family leave, and this is by far the most generous. It's almost full wage replacement, up to $1,000. It's a deduction to $132,000 of pay, similar to Social Security. They can increase the deduction, so right now it's 0.5%. It could be increased at any point to more than that to create sustainability in the fund. It's It's another point. I wrote about this 2 weeks ago in the Darien Times, so people could also read that. It's just a concern that you have another, hi John,
Good luck, John.
another big
Thanks.
government-run program that
Might not be sustainable.
might not be sustainable over the long run. And that hurts people who count on it. Again, many of us supported this. There were other avenues we could have taken to reach this same benefit for people, because it is important for families who have difficult health situations or are welcoming a baby into their family to be able to take that time. So the other one is minimum wage, which over 4 years it increases minimum wage to $15. And again, there was good support for that across the aisle. However, this one, a number of us on the Republican side would have liked to have seen it run out 6 years rather than 4 years and had a few more carve-outs. Right now, the only carve-out is for those under 18, I think it's 200 hours, which for summer jobs, it's, kids.
You work 200 hours in the summer.
Easily.
Yeah.
I mean, within a couple of weeks, you're going to burn that up. So I think it was, again, it was it was an overreach. And I know the business community is deeply concerned about both these issues. And Hubble,
Yeah.
another big Connecticut legacy company, I think they've been here 140 years, they're leaving the state. It was announced probably a month ago now, Aetna was relocating their headquarters to Boston. Now, part of that, in fairness, was the consolidation or the merging with Raytheon, and Raytheon wanted it up in Boston. But it's still, it's just, we need to continue to create policies that job creators want to come and stay in Connecticut. We're not there yet. So we'll continue to work on that. As Jamie mentioned, tolls, we were told to expect a vote on tolls by June 30th.
Oh.
No, that's not going to happen. The toll plan, first of all, a point of clarity, the trucks already pay a fee to use our roads, and people are unaware of that. I believe the revenue line for that is $130 million a year. And they pay that quarterly through an national statewide trucking association, and they pay it to each state. So trucks already pay the tolls. Out-of-state drivers are not paying the toll, and I think tolls in concept make sense, but there are no other spending decreases in other ways. So the gas tax doesn't go down. We'll be putting another fee. Some people say tax, some people say user fee. But my personal feeling is until we cut expenses for people in our state, I don't believe tolls make sense.
Well, also,
We just
Terry-
can't keep increasing spending, increasing expenses, because people have had enough, and it's becoming unaffordable for a broad group of people.
And where, if and when the tolls are passed, where is that money going?
Goes into this, well, that's a good question. The ballot initiative we all voted on last year did say all the money that goes into the Special Transportation Fund remains in a lockbox, so it cannot be used for anything else. What it didn't decide or illuminate was what goes into that fund. So one of the tax increases this year is a tax on used cars. You would think that would go into it was designated to go into the Special Transportation Fund, but no, that got swept into the general fund. So the faith, we collectively, as the state legislature, I don't believe have earned the faith of the people to put tolls in.
I would also.
But again, in concept, sure, they make sense.
There was, in the session prior, the new car sales tax was to be dedicated to the Special Transportation Fund, I think in the neighborhood of $170 million.
Mm-hmm.
In this year's session, it was diverted away from the Special Transportation Fund.
Yeah.
So there's an article from the governor in the media this morning about tolls, and I think he's going to be, I call it a squeeze play. He's going to be looking at ways he can reduce further bonding for non-transportation related projects until tolls are approved. So, It's not surprising.
That
I
was
think
very
that's the-
diplomatically
I think
said.
that's the way it works in Hartford, so it's not surprising. But I know it's a high priority for the governor.
Right.
And in any other circumstance, I'm going to just editorialize for a second,
Mhm.
in any other circumstance, economic circumstance, tolls might make sense,
Mhm.
might be a part of the solution.
Right.
But layering all these things on top and then
Right.
giving back a concession of a middle-class tax cut to, swallow the tolls is just an interesting way to develop policy.
Right. We should have a longer, well, it'll be to be determined.
Yeah.
The other point I'd like to make is the early plans call for out-of-state residents would pay a full fee. In-state residents would get a discount, and it would all be on a, I guess it's a transponder
Transponder.
on your car, like Easy Pass. Whether it would be joined with Easy Pass, those details are to be determined, but there would be 3 pricing structures, one for out-of-state people, one for in-state residents, and the other for in-state residents commuting on a regular basis. But they would get even a further discount. So those are good things should this ever happen.
When you look at our surrounding states, it's hard to argue against tolls when New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts.
Correct.
You drive through all those states and you pay tolls.
That's right.
And I don't object to them if it all goes for transportation, for roads and for
Right.
public
Yeah.
transportation to improve
Right.
our train system.
So the
To me,
one,
that-
I
And
hear
it
that
doesn't-
often. I hear that often, and we talk about this around the COG table, but
Yeah.
if you look in those other states that have tolls, there's always another roadway option that does not have a toll. In this case, we won't have an option, at least in southwestern Connecticut, because the plan is to toll both I-95 and the Merritt Parkway.
Oh, the merits.
Yeah.
I mean, well.
And toll revenue cannot be used for Metro North.
Oh. So it's just roads and bridges,
Correct.
which do need a lot of help.
Absolutely.
Well,
So
do you
where
have
does-
faith that the money's going to go to tolls?
That's the issue.
That's the issue.
That's the issue. Fiscal prudence, to Frank's point.
Yeah.
Terry, I will send you a note. We are having, at our next COG meeting,
Mhm.
Commissioner Gilletti is coming to deliver his toll plan. And it's an open meeting. If anybody wants to drive to Ridgefield for that meeting, I can send out the details.
Date off the top of your head?
I'll send it to you.
Thank
It's
you.
a change date. It's not a standard date. It's a
Okay.
special meeting, so.
Okay. That'd be great. I'd love to
Yeah,
attend.
mhm. Yeah. Okay, that's perfect timing. Anybody have anything else this morning? Linda, I don't think we can approve these
No,
minutes.
we can't.
So we'll hold them for next time.
Sure.
I wish everybody a wonderful summer, safe summer, stay cool.
Well, we'll
It's
see you in
very
another
hot
month.
today.
We'll see you in another,
Hopefully, we'll see each other in July. We'll take a poll of who's available.
oh, okay.
But enjoy the month.
Yes,
Thank you very
you
much.
too.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So Joanne moves, seconded by Frank. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
So Susan, this is your last year as a selectman?